Hey YouTube, Kev here. Big week. We had the new 4Runner announcement. Brand new 2025 6th Gen 4Runner. This has been a long time coming. Um, if you've been following the channel, you know I've got a 5th Gen 4Runner Nautical Blue 2021 Venture Edition, which is a cosmetic package that was offered, basically wrapped around the off-road premium for 2 years. So it was just a limited run. Um, but some of the features of the Venture Edition, I think, were kind of a test um, for the new 6th Gen 4Runner. So um, I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say in the comments. But yeah, I thought as an owner and kind of a power user of the 4Runner, I could offer some pros and cons, what I think so far, kind of first impressions of this 6th Gen. Um, I'm, pretty regular camper, Colorado, Utah. I go to Moab every year. Um, Mountain bike constantly. I've got 3 bikes. And yeah, a little bit of off-roading, nothing too crazy, but every year get a little bit more confident to test the limits of the truck. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective. I'm not a daily commuter. I work remote, so um, that's worth noting as well. But yeah, I thought I would dive in first to one of the topics that most channels don't really spend any time on. At least the first dozen or so videos I've watched don't really talk about it too much. But I wanted to talk about safety. So if you own a 5th Gen 4Runner or earlier, or if you've been shopping for one, you probably know that the safety rating is not the strong suit of the 4Runner. I think it's got a 4 out of 5 for the passenger, or I'm sorry, 4 out of 5 for the driver, and even less for the passenger. Um, and yeah, just overall, if you look at the details of the safety rating, they haven't been great for the 4Runner. Now, there have been some additions every couple of years to improve safety, but it's still, the 5th Gen is nowhere near what modern SUVs have. That said, compared to like a Jeep or even a Bronco, it's probably still in the same neighborhood as far as safety features and safety ratings, but as far as a Toyota is concerned, not nearly as good as the rest of the lineup. So just to give you kind of an overview here. So the 5th Gen 4Runner basically has this Safety Sense P, which is like the original suite of safety features. So it does have a pre-collision system, which is basically some sensors that are monitoring the front of the vehicle. And this has saved my butt a couple of times. So if you're, in traffic and you're not really paying attention to the car in front of you, the 4Runner will stop itself. Same goes for a pedestrian or what have you. So that's a great feature. Dynamic radar cruise control. This is like a first version of this, and it only works above 30 miles per hour. So not going to help you in like bumper to bumper traffic, but for road trips and highway cruising, that is a great feature. I use it all the time. And then lane departure alert. This is basically just a beeping noise that tells you if you're going out of your lane, which frankly, this beeps way too often, so I turned it off in the first few months. But it doesn't steer for you or anything. And then same with automatic high beams. This, basically detects, if it's really dark and there's nobody oncoming, it'll flip on the high beams to help you. In my experience, I don't think it works that great. Maybe it's just the curvy, dark roads here in Colorado, but I don't love that feature, so I turned that off as well. But back to the 6th Gen. So the 6th Gen, all the 4Runners are going to have this Safety Sense 3.0. So That's going to come with an improved radar cruise control, with a full speed range cruise control, and basically that goes all the way down to 20 miles per hour. So that's improved. Lane departure alert now has steering assist. I think this is a huge feature. You know, it really just in any driving conditions, if this can help you avoid swerving into the cars next to you, um, I think that is a great feature with a 5,000 pound vehicle with cargo and bikes and maybe a trailer, whatever. I think that is going to be huge. I've used it in other Toyotas and I like that feature, so that's a welcome addition. Lane tracing assist. This is basically like again, like an improved version of lane departure alert, and to help keep you centered, and that's great. Road sign assist, that's nice as well. Again, automatic high beams, that's the same, and proactive driving assist. So it uses the camera system and the radar to provide gentle braking into curves or gentle braking into steering to help support driving tasks. So again, these kinds of features are really helpful on road trips, or long trips. So I think these are great additions. Now, my 4Runner, which is a 2021, does have a backup camera. It does have lights in the mirrors for turning, but it does not have blind spot monitoring. So I know the last couple of years they added that, and I think they added rear cross traffic alert as well, which is great for parking lots. So they're kind of getting there with the 5th gen, but it's not going to be as good as the 6th gen. I also expect the rollover rating and the airbags to be better in this new 6th gen. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out because I think that kind of gets lost in all of the the excitement of the new 4Runner and the design and the engine and everything else. But I think safety is really important. If you're a family person and you've got kids, or even if you just have dogs, like all those features are helpful. So if you're shopping for a 5th gen and you're on the fence, maybe the safety stuff could turn you. That's worth investigating further. So I'll be anxious to see what the actual safety ratings are, especially compared to the Jeep and the Bronco. But yeah, enough about safety. Let's move on. Let's talk about design. So I've always been a huge fan of the 5th gen 4Runner design, especially like the refresh that they did. I think it was in 2010 or something like that, where it got a little bit more edgy. Especially the front end looks great. I think the design has really lasted well, and there's not much I would change about it. But in terms of the 6th gen, I think they did a great job. So this is the TRD Pro, and here is that brand new Trail Hunter, which we didn't have before. Some more TRD Pro shots. This is a good one of the Trail Hunter. So let's start off with the tires. So these are bigger tires. I think these are going to be 32s or 33s. Either way, that's bigger than what currently comes on the 4Runner. These are like 265s. I believe these are either 275 or 285. Most folks, especially here in Colorado, they end up doing larger tires anyway. So that's great that they're offering them from the factory. It's not 35s, but most people don't need 35s. Frankly, most people probably don't want 35s. The fuel economy is bad as it is, and so many folks are not actually using 35s for what they're designed for. So I think like a 33 might be perfect to the 4Runner. Now, I've got KO2s on mine. I think these are open countries, Toyo open countries. I don't know too much about them, but I have some friends that have them, and they like them. So, I'm sure this will be a fine all-terrain tire. And, so that's huge. I like the new front end. Big fan of the light bar that's borrowed from the Tacoma, the brighter light bar. That is great, for overlanding and trying to find that campsite at night. I love how it's got the rigid switchable fogs with the white and the amber. That is great if you've ever followed a vehicle in the desert, and that the dust clouds can be real, and the only way that vehicle's going to see you in the rear view mirrors if you have some amber lights and maybe some bright light bar lights on your rig. Again, a lot of folks do this kind of thing anyway, so great to see it stock. Keeping with the design, going back to the tires, this copper wheel I think looks great. I think especially with this new green color, it looks awesome. I kind of hope they offer the copper with the dark blue. I'm assuming there's going to be a dark blue because there always has been. It's my favorite color, so I really hope nautical blue or something like it makes a return. The dark blue has not really made a showing yet on the GX or the Land Cruiser, except for the non-off-road GX, I think. So the 4Runner is kind of my only hope, and I think the copper wheel would look great. Now, I do prefer kind of an alloy wheel. I've really loved my Venture Edition TRD Pro wheels. These were unique to the Venture Edition for like a limited time only. I think they eventually switched to a black one, but I think the gunmetal looks amazing. So it'd be great to see something like that optional either in the Trail Hunter or on the TRD Pro. Toyota has been known to kind of do that. So like even these look pretty cool, but again, I'm not a huge fan of the black. There's so much black on this already. Like, I don't know. I think certain colors always look better with alloy than black, but everyone's got different tastes. So hood scoop on the TRD Pro, I think they could have gone without it. I know that's been kind of a signature of the off-road and the Pro models previously, but it gets in the way for off-roading and it's not functional. So I would much rather have the visibility. I think going without it on the Trail Hunter was the right way to go. Still looks very aggressive, but you're going to have better sight lines for off-roading. And I think that's one area, the Land Cruiser, that design, they kind of knocked it out of the park. It's got, even a more upright windshield and a better hood for that. So I'm glad at least one of the 4Runners has that option. It's good to see they're offering a slider, even if it's a little bit of a short one compared to the aftermarket offerings. It still looks pretty good. I like to use mine kind of as a step. I don't think this is actually a step. I think it's just a true kind of slider, but it's great that there's an option from the factory, because that's, these are like $1,000 usually, maybe $1,500. So the more they can put on there, the less you have to do aftermarket, at least right away. And then the snorkel, that's cool for the desert, driving out in the desert, keeping the engine clean and cool. No issues with that. Roof rack, this is more of like an aftermarket style rack, which is going to be great for rooftop tents and mounting things. I've been a big fan of the basket on the Venture Edition. This also came on, this is the Mega Warrior from Yakima. This also came on the Land Cruiser Heritage Edition. It's just much easier to tie down, when you're just putting cargo up there, like firewood and stuff. But this is going to be very helpful for so many folks that love those rooftop tents. I actually sleep in the back of the 4Runner because I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'8", so I can kind of make it work with the air mattress, the Luno air mattress, which I still have to do a review on. But for the rest of the population that is, a little bit taller, the rooftop tent is going to be the way to go probably, and it's going to be, I imagine, really easy to mount and hopefully a little more, durable and sturdier than these old rails. I don't think these could ever hold that much. So that's why so many folks did custom racks. So it's good to see that from the factory. That'll be under warranty and everything. So, just continuing with the theme of the exterior design. I like the new taillights. I like the new headlights. I think those are great. really the back looks very similar to the current one. Glad they did keep the rear window. I'll talk about that more later in regards to the interior, but I think that is a staple of the 4Runner. They should have offered it on all the Toyota SUVs and trucks, but I'm glad to see it made it on the 4Runner at least, because yeah, people were going to be pretty mad about that. It's just so nice. We don't get the removable doors and everything of like the Jeep and the Bronco and stuff. So like this does so much, not only for like utility for camping and stuff and cargo, but it also is great for airflow. Anyone that has a 4Runner, especially if you have the sunroof or the moonroof like I do, you know, even if it's a little windy, like you could have the rear window and the sunroof open, and you don't really need to open the side windows, and you can get some really nice airflow coming through. And if it's not windy, you could have everything down, and man, that's the open air experience is pretty nice. But you don't have the drawback of leaks and stuff like some of the Jeeps have. So glad they kept that. And I think this is an automatic hatch now, which is fine. I've never really thought I needed it, but I'm sure there are scenarios where I'll be glad it's there. Yeah, not too much else to say on the design. I think it was a very conservative refresh, which is probably a smart move, so you don't make too many people angry, and you get a lot of those old 5th gen owners to hopefully upgrade. I know that's what they're going for. But yeah, you can see here 33-inch all-terrain tires. So yeah, 33s, that's great. I think that will be very nice. But yeah, that's enough for design. Next, let's move on to off-roading. Okay, guys, let's talk about off-roading. So I'm gonna actually start with the Trail Hunter and kind of work down from the top. And my reasoning for that is, frankly, I think the Trail Hunter is probably, if I was going to get a new 4Runner, the Trail Hunter would be the one. So I figured that that's pretty much top of the range, and is the only one that would actually be like a significant upgrade from what I have now, in terms of like off-roading features, which are important to me. But yeah, let's talk about the Trail Hunter's capabilities. But a lot of this will apply to the entire 4Runner range, at least the off-road models. So first of all, and this is the press release here from the website. We've known about the new engines for a while, and now that we've seen the reveal of the various models, we know a little bit more about how these engines are going to impact the lineup. But with either engine, in terms of off-roading, this should be an upgrade, either way. You're going to get more torque. I think that the current 5th gen has 270 or horsepower and torque around there, or somewhere around there, which isn't terrible. Like, it's fine for most off-roading situations, but especially in the mountains at elevation, naturally aspirated engines, they do suffer, as TFL likes to mention very often, because they're also here in Colorado. And that's absolutely true. When you get up, trying to visit the ski resorts up here, it really feels like a dog. And when you're already worried about, weather conditions, or I can't even imagine towing like with a 4Runner in the mountains, or at least a 5th gen in the mountains. That's got to be pretty rough. So yeah, the increased torque of both engines is going to be very good for off-roading. Even the base 2.4 liter turbo, that's going to be much better at elevation, so it'll preserve more of the power. and this is a huge bump in torque. It's like another 50 pound-feet over the current fifth gen. So I think this engine would probably be fine. And if folks are a little nervous about hybrids for whatever reason, I'm kind of glad that they do offer this, at least in like the TRD off-road options. And and then we have this new iForce Max, which we really haven't seen too much of yet, at least in the smaller vehicles like the Tacoma. I think those are going to be landing here shortly. We should see a lot of videos about driving impressions of the hybrid Tacomas. But, we do know that, they do deliver monster torque numbers, 465 pound-feet. That is just insane. So that's that's like double basically over the torque of the fifth gen. When you figure in like at elevation, that's a huge number, and it comes on really early in the rev range. So for off-roading, that's going to be probably really impressive, and I can't wait to kind of drive both and see how they feel. So far, and a lot of the reviews out there, it seems like, and the driving impressions, it seems like, even the base engine has plenty of power. So I think for off-roading, that's kind of a huge benefit. Running down the list here, we talked a little bit about some of the off-road equipment for the Trail Hunter, including the rigid fog lights and the ARB roof rack here, and the I'm guessing these are ARB sliders. Maybe they're just Toyota sliders. Same thing with the skid plates underneath, and then the Old Man Emu shocks, which are supposed to be better for overlanding and off-roading. So I think that's huge that they're offering these items stock, and I think those will definitely help with off-roading. That said, one thing that I'm noticing in the coverage that I've seen so far, let's go back here to some of these pictures. So you can't really tell here too much in this picture, but it seems like the rear tire or the spare tire sits pretty low, and that's going to affect the departure angle for sure. And I believe that is because of the battery. We've also seen pictures that the cargo area is higher in the Trail Hunter and the TRD Pros, so you do lose some cargo area, but I'm guessing that's why the rear tire sits kind of low. I know it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but yeah, so that I see is kind of a negative. That's always, the departure of the fifth gen is not super great either, but it's been okay. I was really, really hoping to see better angles on the new 4Runner after this long and so many years of folks having to modify, either with cutting the bumper, both bumpers, putting on steel bumpers for high clearance, bigger tires, big lifts. It's like you lose a little bit of the benefit of the 33s if you're still gonna, not really enhance the angles, if not make them a little worse. So I'm gonna be really interested to see how this compares. I'm sure we're gonna see a lot of 5th gen versus 6th gen content, and that's great. So many people are obsessed with 4Runner, so I think we're going to continue to see a lot of good content. But yeah, even, and it also sounds like ground clearance is about 9.2, which that's, I think, less than like the current, TRD Pro is like 9.5, and mine with KDSS is a bit lower than that even. I think, in certain areas, because of the KDSS system, it sits a tad lower than the 5th gen TRD Pro. but I think it's actually like almost identical to the Land Cruiser clearance, which is interesting. The new Land Cruiser I think is like 8.7, 8.8. But yeah, so that's a little concerning. It's like the 33s, okay, that's cool, but then, these off-road models, at least the top end ones, only come with the hybrid, so then your rear tire's going to sit lower, and I think the rear is maybe a tad longer, and so your departure is worse, and then the front I think is maybe a little worse. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It seems like there's more clearance here for approach, but I don't know. We'll have to see some actual off-roading with these. But yeah, and then kind of along the same lines, like the Tacoma and these higher end 4Runners, they have this stabilizer disconnect, but it's only for the front. Whereas previous fifth gen 4Runners, you could option them with KDSS, which kind of did front and back. It wasn't like a true, it's not like a true stabilizer disconnect, but it basically is. Like it relaxes the sway bars, and it's slightly different on the left versus the right side, based on where the hardware is mounted. But yeah, the KDSS on the 4Runner, from what I've seen, it does articulate a little better in the front than the TRD Pro, but a little bit less in the back. Now that might have to do with the nature of the TRD Pro. I believe does have a little bit more clearance than the TRD off-road models, maybe like another inch, and so that might play into the articulation. But I have read that that's about how it compares. Now I don't know how the KDSS model would compare to, say, an SR5 that's not a TRD Pro and doesn't have KDSS. That would be another interesting comparison. But going back to the over trail 4Runner, we'll have to see if it's much of a difference compared to what we already have with the existing 4Runner, both the Pro and the KDSS options. But anyway, my point is like, I feel like the stabilizer disconnect was kind of a direct shot at like the Rubicon Jeeps and also the new Bronco to try to like capitalize on that marketing a bit. Whether or not it's going to be an improvement over what we already had, I think the jury's still out. I do know that the higher end Lexus Overtrail, that's going to have the new EKDSS, which is supposed to be even better than what's offered on the current Lexus GX and the current Land Cruisers out there. And so, the advantage of KDSS on the 4Runner was I would say, partially about off-roading, but it was, I think, a bigger benefit for on-roading because 4Runners, 5th gen 4Runners have always had this issue of dipping under braking and accelerating, and also a lot of body roll. And mine with the KDSS still has those issues, but I think it's a much more comfortable ride. And so I'm going to be very curious. I'm sure the new 4Runners will feel, more premium and, better quality and more refined. I'm really hoping that's the case. But, the fact that there's no the KDSS option, I'm going to be on the lookout for like, how this new platform does compared to the old one. Both the TRD Pro with the Fox shocks and the TRD off-road with the KDSS and non-KDSS for that matter. So yeah, that's all going to be very interesting to see. In seeing some of the Tacoma coverage so far, it seems like it articulates pretty well. I forget the name of the channel, but there's a guy out there that does these ramp tests where he measures the articulation of all these off-road rigs, and I feel like the sway bar disconnect does help. But whether or not it's better than, like I said, what we've had before, the jury's still out on that. So, but yeah, let's hope that the upper trims, the TRD off road, the TRD Pro, and the Trailhunter, I'm hoping they have a much more composed ride. Obviously, they're still gonna feel like a truck because they're body on frame and solid rear axle. So there's only so much you can do, but I'm really hoping that it's a lot less work, especially on longer road trips. 4Runners I feel like have always been better than Jeeps. I haven't driven the new Bronco yet. I think that the new Bronco's a little bit easier to travel with and do long trips with than the Jeep ever was. But I think the 4Runner has been more composed, more a bit easier to live with. So hopefully they improve on that and make it even better. And it's good. It's better on road and better off road than the old one. But yeah, let's talk more like off road tech. So besides the sway bar disconnect, you still get the rear locker in these upper trims, which is great. I'm glad it's still there. And it sounds like, based on the press release, I saw mention of A-Track, so A-Track is still in there. I haven't really seen buttons for A-Track in these, new screenshots and these new impressions. So I don't know if that's gonna be like something you have to activate still, or if it's just gonna automatically be on all the time. Because previously, it required a button, up near the rear locker to activate that A-Track. And A-Track, I think, is probably the most underrated and underused feature because nobody knows what it does. But A-Track is, about as close as you can get to a front locker without actually having one. It's not as good as a front locker, but it's going to get you out of probably 80% of the scenarios where a front locker would help. Now, that said, I would have loved to see a front locker on the 6th gen. I think that would have been like almost nail in the coffin for Bronco and Jeep, at least for most people that are on the fence. Because the 4Runner, the 5th gen, has always been super capable, but man, adding a front locker would just be insane. And obviously Toyota can do it. It's been in plenty of older Land Cruisers, and it's in the new 300 series Land Cruiser that we will not get, but is available overseas. It would just be great, a great feature to have. I think that would have been an easy, well, not easy, but like, I don't know, that one feature alone, I think would have given the 6th gen so much more in terms of, off-road street cred, especially combined with these 33 all-terrain tires and sliders, and skid plates. Like, what else do you need if you have a front locker? So is it going to be super capable? Obviously, yes. And even if it has slightly worse angles than the old one, at least you get like full skid plates on the Trailhunter. So, because you're probably going to use them if the clearance isn't that amazing and the angles aren't necessarily better. That's been on my wish list for a while, is to just get full armor underneath. I don't do a ton of off-roading, so it hasn't been high on my priority list. I did get the sliders, and those are great, and I'm glad I have them, but I just don't do any crazy rock crawling, and it hasn't really been an issue. I'll nick some of the existing the stock skid plates every now and again, and the sliders, but for what I do, it's not really necessary. I didn't really get the vehicle to do rock crawling, but this thing would totally be capable. I just wish, man, if it had another like 6 inches of ground clearance, that would have been amazing, and some steel bumpers, at least as an option. Because I mean, the Tacoma got that rear steel bumper. I kind of assumed it was going to make its way to the Trail Hunter here as well, but it did not. So that's a shame because, like, you know, folks are still going to have to cut these bumpers, I feel like, unless there's some new way that Toyota designed this to remove these very easily. There's probably going to be some cutting involved, but otherwise, this thing's like good to go. And, you know, especially with the new power plant, you know, it's going to be super capable, even as is. But, you know, these are just things that I was really hoping to see. You know, front locker would have been great. Steel bumpers would have been amazing. And, you know, but we don't have them here on this 4Runner. Not super shocked because they're not on the Land Cruiser either. So, and they're not on the GX, which is like $80,000. But anyway, moving on, kind of going back to the off-road stuff a little bit, different direction. One thing I noticed, so this is the 5th gen off-road controls, which are up top, you know, near like the rear view mirror. And I always thought this was a great design, super intuitive. You know, switch your multi-terrain option here, your different modes, and the speed of the crawl control, or you know, downhill assist, and then basically A-track and rear locker, and your emergency button. I thought this was a great design, and I saw in the new one that they get away from that. All the buttons are basically down here, which not terrible, but you do kind of have to take your eye off the road, which is surprising, you know, because like they give you that huge screen in the dash, which is cool for, you know, Apple CarPlay and everything else, but while you're driving, you have to kind of look down here to engage the off-road stuff, where at least in the old one you could kind of keep your eye on the road and do these on the fly without totally taking your focus off of the trail. Now on the flip side, this will have all of those you know, off-road cameras that are built in, and those are going to be great on that big screen. I think that's going to be really helpful. I mean, they're, you know, yeah, sure, it doesn't really give you like great depth perception on a screen like this and with the cameras, but man, if it saves you from hitting your bumpers or anything, any part of the truck on a tree, or, you know, scraping a tree, or running into, you know, another vehicle, or going off the trail, like there's just really no downside to the cameras. And the cameras will be even helpful on the TRD Pro, because it's still got that hood scoop, which is unnecessary. So yeah, cameras will be a welcome addition to off-roading. And what else? I don't think there's too much more to say on the off-roading front. I was kind of curious about those isodynamic seats that were available in the Tacoma. If I had to choose, though, I would still prefer the rear seat room, the leg room, which seems to be an issue on those seats. But they do look pretty impressive. I'm sure they work at least a little bit. And yeah, when you're trying to get any speed off-road on some trails, man, you need all the help you can get, because your head's going to be tossing around like crazy. And, you know, I am interested to see how that goes. Oh, yeah, one more thing is just in regards to the exhaust. I've noticed on some of the models that the exhaust, you can't really see it here, but the exhaust kind of hangs a bit low. You know, the 5th gen wasn't perfect, but it does seem to hang a little bit low on the 6th Gen 4Runner and the Tacoma. So I don't know what they were thinking there, but maybe that will go away in future models. But because you don't want to be smacking that thing. That goes back to the whole departure angle thing. Um, but yeah, the cool thing about Toyota, I guess, is like every couple of years there's like this, feature creep where they do kind of enhance them. It's just very subtle improvements every few couple of years or every few years you'll see more features make its way, and as the truck and SUV and overlanding market is heating up still, since COVID, um, I think that, Bronco and Jeep and all the mid-sized trucks, they're just going to keep bringing it. The competition is hot right now. There's several mid-sized trucks that have, front lockers, and like I said, Jeep and Bronco have the front lockers, so and bigger tires and the aftermarket bumpers. So maybe that's stuff that we'll see, come down the road on the future model years. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I think that's it as far as off-roading. You know, uh, I guess another thing to mention about the Trail Hunter, it does have that air compressor, which I think is an amazing feature. That's borrowed from the Tacoma as well. I would definitely use that for airing up and airing down, and also for inflating like pedal boards and kayaks, stuff like that. Bike tires, whatever. So that's a very neat feature. And then, yeah, but that's I think about it for the off-road stuff. So we can move on to interior uh, updates on the 6th gen now. Let's talk about the interior. Um, so I don't really see a whole lot of downside to this new interior. I think for the most part, it's going to be a major upgrade. Um, that said, I feel like there's been mixed reviews about the new infotainment. So even though it's nice and large, big screen, um, it seems like there's some issues with displaying two things at once on the screen. And now maybe that's just user error, but I've seen it referenced now in several reviews. Also, um, I feel like it doesn't have a good home screen. And lastly, um, I feel like the whole like shared profile thing is maybe a little bit of a nuisance if you don't really want to use it in multiple Toyotas. So maybe it would be cool if there was a way to like opt out of all that to have a more like unobtrusive, more basic thing, but I doubt we would see something like that. Um, and then the second thing is on the gauge cluster, um, at least with the Tacoma, and I'm assuming it's going to be the case with the 4Runner, and I think it's the case with the Land Cruiser too. That the fuel gauge is not very helpful because it's like a 4 bar thing, and you don't truly know when that bar is going to disappear. And I think it tells you how many miles you have left. At least I think I saw that on the Land Cruiser, or maybe that was the GX, but I think the fuel gauge isn't great. Hopefully that's something that can be upgraded or improved. I don't know how they would do that. Um, but yeah, those are the couple of gripes that I've kind of heard so far. I've already mentioned like the off-road controls are over here instead of up here. But yeah, I don't know. Volume knob, it's not that much different in terms of size. I'm glad it's a knob, thank God. Um, and then, big AC controls, which is pretty much similar to the old one. So that's good. But yeah, I do like. It seems like the storage is okay. I think there's like a shelf here, which is kind of nice. Um, I think the phone pad might be an issue. I've heard that reference now in several Toyota reviews on the new trucks, um, in terms of the phone moving around. And yeah, hopefully they did something better with the console, or the armrest rather. Right now it's kind of a black hole, so maybe they figured out a way to make that more useful. And yeah, I think the JBL portable radio in the dash, that's a cool feature. No issue with that. And yeah, let's see. Oh, I don't like the dial for the 4 high, 4 low. Like if we go, let's see here. Yeah, so like the non off road and non pro trims had the dial before, but I think I am gonna miss the lever. You can kind of see it here. That's on the existing off road trims. Um, so I'm gonna miss that. Obviously, we're going to get a whole bunch of new USB chargers. I think that's great. And yeah, let's see what else. Still JBL audio, digital rear view mirror. I think that's awesome. I'm excited about that feature. We don't have that now. I think that'll be very helpful, especially if you've got your 4Runner loaded up to the brim on camping trips or long road trips, or you're moving cross country like I did and you can't really see out the back window. Let's see, what else did they give us here? Not too much on the interior. I'm kind of curious, I referenced in one of my other videos about, the lack of a flat floor. I'm kind of wondering if this pull-out cargo drawer will make a return in the new 4Runner as an option. That would be one to look out for. If maybe that would help if you need a flat floor. I'm not sure, but it certainly did in the current one. What else? Still got plugs in the back. Looks like yeah, I think pretty similar to the current one in that regard. And then yeah, I think that's about it for the interior. Those were kind of my main gripes, I would say. Be really cool if we could like option a cool box like the Land Cruiser, but I doubt that'll happen because they've got to have some distinguishing features. Shifter looks good still. I'm glad it's still a nice solid pull shifter and no stupid buttons like a lot of the Hondas out there and some of the other brands. But yeah, looks good. Looks good there. No major complaints. To kind of wrap this up, let's talk about a guesstimate in terms of price. I think we all know that prices on everything have gone up, especially after COVID. And yeah, crazy inflation out there right now. Everything is like $10 at the grocery store. And it seems that even before all this inflation, every time a new vehicle comes out, it goes up like $5,000. So I would kind of expect the entry trims to kind of go up at least to 42, maybe 45. And then the upper trims probably closer to, 57 up to 60, for the Overtrail and the TRD Pro, which, for all you get is I think, not too terrible. It is getting up there into the Land Cruiser price. which, the design is arguably cleaner and more premium looking on the Land Cruiser. But you do get a lot of off-road goodies on these upper trims. And I think enough upgrades over the old one to warrant a slight increase in price. But that said, markups might make it ridiculous on the TRD Pro and the Overtrail when those come out, as we're all used to. So I think I'm probably most curious about like the TRD off-road trim, where that's going to land. Those have been hovering around like 42 to 45K. I would expect, a well-spec'd TRD Pro or TRD Off-Road Premium to come close to 50 grand. But man, if you can option some of the cool features from the upper trims like you can now, so like specifically, I would love to be able to option the LED fogs with the changeable color, the light bar, the tires, the bigger tires, and the air compressor from the Overtrail model. Those are kind of like the standout features for me over the old one. And so if you could just get that entry price lower, but still, man, if you could get all that from the factory and under the factory warranty, for less than, I don't know, 50K, like that might be optimistic, maybe 55K, but like, the TRD off-road, it sounds like it's probably not going to have the hybrid, so there has to be some savings there. So we'll see, but I would think with the added torque of the new base turbo engine, non-hybrid, even if you add 33s, I think that would be a pretty compelling package. I'm really also hoping that there's like a factory lift option like they do on the Tacoma right now. That would be really cool if you could get all that factory warranted. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging in there. I am excited about this new 4Runner. Will I get one right away? Absolutely not. I never would buy a first-year model. I feel like that's asking for it, because they almost always have issues. We're already seeing it with the Tundra. We're seeing it with the Tacoma. I'm hoping for no major issues on the new 4Runner, but I would never get a first-year model. And I've barely got 50K on my Venture, and I love it so much. I know it would probably last another 20 years, no problem. Another 200,000 miles. So I might, no matter what I do, if I ever get a new SUV from Toyota, there's a chance I may hold on to the old one because it's just so reliable and so good. But yeah, that's all I got for now. We'll talk to you in the next one. Thanks, guys.